Okay, we're live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Up Church's Metaphysical Bible Hangout. This is our weekly Bible study. We are very much a mobile church. We do a lot of things online, and one of them is our Bible study. Of course, you are always welcome to come here in person. I'm really excited about tonight because there are some, I don't know what to call it, wacky, crazy, just are we back in the 50s and the 40s? Things that are happening in our world. I want to talk about those things in light of universal law. And we are looking at universal law from the purpose of transforming ourselves. And so that's what tonight's conversation is about. And so I'll go ahead and bring up the PowerPoint and let's get started. So the question for tonight is, do you know how to handle racism with universal law? Do you know how to handle racism with universal law? The application specifically, maybe that's a better way to ask the question. Do you know how to apply universal law when we're talking about racism? And the chapter that we're working with is chapter 7 in the book, Your Life, written by Bruce McArthur. I want to take a pulse. I kind of want to get a sense of like just where everybody is. And I want to ask you, where are you emotionally with the events of Charlottesville, Virginia? In just 60 seconds. And you can type it in the comments. If you're sitting live, you can unmute yourself. Where are you emotionally with the events of Charlottesville, Virginia? Okay. All right, Mia, I will look for your comments. I did think, did I get the right name? Hey, Quintina, good evening. I'll look for your comments, Mia, in the chat. But where are you emotionally? 30 seconds. Where are you emotionally with Charlottesville? And I know if I speak for myself, I think on some level I'm a little bit numb from all of what I have witnessed. If I had to talk about a feeling, I don't feel afraid. I don't know if I feel anger. I feel detached in some ways, and I'm not even sure 100% like what that is, but it's there. I don't know if I have any strong feelings either way. It's almost like I feel like this thing is playing out outside of me, right? So I don't know if that, but I'm asking you, where are you in terms of your emotions with Charlottesville, Virginia? And I'll leave that question there and keep going. Mia says, yes, I am kind of numb, kind of anticipating some reason to pop off, mixed emotions yet detached. Yeah, it's just, there's been so much. I mean, Charlottesville for me, is in a series of events like this, meaning not a rally, but atrocities against people of color. So with all of the police brutality, the attacks on voting rights, it's like a series of things that are happening. And so I'm really kind of in this weird middle ground space. Kanisha says, I'm a bit numb about it. I'm not angry or afraid, only asking myself, what do I need to do as a metaphysician? Quintina says, living 3 hours away, I have to be mindful that not all people are like those who attended. At the time, I wanted to move back to Cleveland, but then I realized that was not the answer. Hey, Beverly. Kanisha says, asking another question, how do I assist my sons with understanding the events and yet making sure they are not afraid? Oh, that is an excellent question, Kanisha, because growing up in my household, one of the things that I remember was this sense of fear that we had around my brother. And now this is hindsight. In the moment, you're not thinking that, but just hindsight, I thought about the fear that really just kind of characterized the experience of, how would things happen if there were a draft? What would we do about it? And how, and where would we go with that? Olga, did you want to contribute?
No. Just got here. Just got
Oh,
here.
okay. Okay, no worries, no worries. I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
the question that I was asking is, where are you with Charlottesville, Virginia, in terms of your feeling? And Mia says, I live in the DMV, not surprised something happened in Virginia, but still too close to home. And I think, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. If I were in that area, I think I certainly would feel that way. Quintina said, it reminded me of my childhood and watching the news during the 60s. Yes, yes, yes. So hopefully we'll touch on that, Kanisha, because I have a young man that I am responsible for raising, and I am committed to keeping an environment that is fear-free. I'm committed to that. And that first means that I've got to get the fear out of me. I cannot give what I do not have. So if I want to raise him to be a fearless but wise individual, then that fear has to be eradicated in my own spirit. And so I certainly work with that. Hey, Myra.
Hey.
Hey, hey, hey. You up late in Miami? All right, let me keep going. So we have some announcements. We've got opening prayer. We're going to talk about why universal law matters for you. We're going to clarify sowing and reaping. I had a young lady in North Carolina who sent me an awesome question that really helped push me to just kind of say, let's back up for a second and kind of look at what this is and what we're talking about. And then we're going to talk about applying universal law to racism, and then Q&A. And of course, please ask questions throughout. This is absolutely a dialogue and not a monologue. Know your why. So I am committed, especially in light of Charlottesville, to wake up as many people as possible to their innate divinity and to inspire them to live from it. That is so important to me. It's a reason for being, because when you know who you are, no one can take that from you. And you create your experience out of that. When you know that you are always at cause and can always be at cause in your experience, then you never have to live in fear. Doesn't mean that fear won't come up and that you won't deal with fear, but it does mean that you will have a right response to the things that are happening in your world. And so this is, I was saying this to one of my teachers in training, that we were born for such a time as this, and we have a teaching for such a time as this. This is a free offering, but I also believe in the law of giving and receiving. And if this has blessed you, if this has made a difference for you, then help me make a difference for more people. And you can make a gift right at revsherri.com. A gift of any size is greatly appreciated. And what it goes towards are just expenses with producing it, as well as just marketing it and making other people aware of it so that we can take this message around the world. And I thank you in advance for any gift you decide to share. The way that this series works, there is always a blog post that precedes the Bible Hangout, sometimes by 24 hours, sometimes by 5 minutes. The blog post comes out on Thursdays, the Bible Hangout, and we also have the Universal Law Library, which will persist even beyond this series once we're done with this text. And in the law library, it's user-generated content. This week, I included a video that I just love. Lisa Nichols was on, oh gosh, I don't even know if I'll be able to say his name. It was like 10 million or billion. Anyway, the point is the video is in there. And again, to look at her life, where she came from a mother on government assistance in Inglewood, California, raising a son, father goes to prison at 8 months, and to where her life is today, where she sits literally in the 1% of people in the earning of, people in the country, and the life of service that she has built for herself. It is a remarkable transformation. And what it represents is that when you're working with this universal law, you have the ability to transform your life to such a degree that it is almost unrecognizable to you. That's available to you. You can have that. It's not reserved for just a few, but you got to be willing to do the work. You got to be willing to look at yourself. You got to be willing to examine your beliefs, and you got to be willing to tear down the kingdoms in your own mind. And she talks about that in the video, where she had to put her own ego, or she calls it her she-go. She had to put her own she-go in check in order to move forward in her experience, in order to move beyond where she was. And you have the ability to transform yourself that way. And meaning, and I don't mean going for millions of dollars unless that's what you want, but you have the ability to transform your life in such a way that how your life looks right now, and where you're going will be completely unrecognizable. And there are tons of stories. I mean, she's just a modern day parable, but there are tons of stories like that when you look at Joseph and where Joseph started as the youngest of, or next to youngest of the brothers, the one who is the favorite son, and all that he goes through, and then rises to power in Egypt. These stories are there to inspire us. They're there to remind us that this kind of complete and total transformation is available to us. A Moses who was born and raised in a household where he observed people who looked like him being abused, and to break away from that and to spend 40 years in the Midian desert and to free his own mind so that he could go back and free people. Remarkable transformations. And they didn't stop when the last text was included in the Bible. Well, when you say written, but when the last text, when they closed the canon, that wasn't the end of the story. But there are still stories of transformation, and universal law is that process by which we let out that which is within us. And so I hope that that you will find that in your experience with universal law. I got a couple of comments. Ray says, I think this situation has presented us with an opportunity to truly practice metaphysics in light of the facts of the world. What can we do as metaphysicians to create an atmosphere of peace in ourselves and the world around us? And Mia says, I agree. He says, in times like this, I think of President Obama and the peace and poise he has in difficult situations when he was personally attacked. That was a great lesson. I agree. It was an absolutely great lesson. Wonderful. Let's keep going. September 23rd, I will be in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I have no idea how close that is to Charlottesville. I don't care. I will be there. September 23rd, actually the 22nd and the 23rd, I will be speaking first at the Fillmore Festival and then at the Metaphysical Bible Gathering. And I invite you to come. Come join me. I would love to see you. I'd love to hang out and get to know you. And I haven't been on that side of the I'm going to say the planet, but that side of the country in a number of years. So I am actively looking forward to seeing friends and family and people that I haven't connected with in a long time. So if you can make your way to Virginia, or we can get together someplace close to Virginia Beach, that would be great. I'd love to see you. My book is out, The Money Poems. And actually, I got the best testimony. I don't have time to go into this evening because I took a little bit longer in the beginning, but it's on the blog post, and so you can read it. A young woman in Houston, Texas, who's been working with the poems, who sent me a testimony about it, and it's absolutely remarkable because it really demonstrates this simple abundance where it's just plenty in all kinds of forms. And it's not about winning the lotto. It's about conditioning your mind to stay in the flow of God. And so I encourage you to pick up a copy. You can get it at Amazon. And I'm asking you guys to please leave a review on Amazon. Those reviews are so important. They're literally like gold for a number of reasons. One, you know, the first 10, well, you know, those are friends and family, right? Those are the folks that know you. But when you get up, you know, 15, 20, it's like, well, yeah, there's probably a couple folk in there that don't know her personally. So I am asking you to leave an honest review on Amazon.com. Thank you so much in advance for that. The scripture for this series is Matthew 5:17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. That is our whole conversation, is fulfilling the law. How do we fulfill the law, especially for such a time as this? How do we fulfill the law when all hell is breaking loose? What do we do? And so that's the conversation that we're going to have this evening. And so I just ask that let's take a moment to just center ourselves And wherever you are, if you could just put down whatever you have, you might be cooking, you might be getting the kids ready for bed. If you just take a few seconds to just take a deep breath, to just be in this space right now. The Spirit has a word for you, and I am asking God for all the wisdom, the power, the substance, the life, and the love to convey this message tonight. The people are hurting, and we need a word to soothe their hearts. We need a word so that they remember that God is in charge and all is well. And there is nothing in all the world to fear, for greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And so we are asking for the authority, the dominion, and the audacity to step out on the word of God, to step out on the universal law that governs all experience, and to create lives of peace and love and happiness and joy, and then to show other people how to do it. And I thank you, God, for however you use tonight's conversation. Let it be a blessing for the men and women that are present here tonight. I know you hear me when I pray, and so I simply relax and allow the magic that is you to flow through me. In the name and through the power that is in the name of Christ Jesus. It is so. So it is. So why universal law matters for you? Many times we believe we are stuck with a certain expression, when in fact we hold the key to our own freedom. This last statement is from Walt Whitman. Nothing external to me has power over me. I was listening to, and I think I'm probably a fan of the Reverend William Barber. And I'm sure you guys know who he is. And if you don't, you should definitely look him up. And one of the things that he shared in a clip that I just looked at is that this Confederate consciousness, that's not his word, that's Ed Bacon's word. This Confederate consciousness has been reassembling itself through time. And he talked about the statues being erected, and that they weren't erected immediately following the Civil War. They were erected, most of them, between 1898 and 1922. And as he was outlining this history, the feeling that was coming up inside of me was, okay, I know the history, but my past does not have to equal my future. That's true individually, and that's true collectively. That we can get to a place individually that's like a tipping point where we tip over out of the patterns of what we came up with and move into something greater. We can also do that collectively. And I think that it is incumbent on each of us to begin to do a deep dive within our own souls to look for the things that are our unique gifts. Because here's the thing, you have something in you that is so powerful and so wonderful and so amazing that it can shift the global conversation. Hear that. If you remember, before this mess in Charlottesville, Virginia, the conversation was all about Russia, Russia, Russia. And now, is anybody talking about Russia? The thing is that you can leave your divine fingerprint in such a way that you shift the global conversation, that you can so get in touch with that which is universal inside of you, that which is uniquely yours to give, that you shift what people are thinking about, what people are paying attention to. But you got to take your mind off the world. You can't get there with your eye on the world. You got to keep your eye, as we say with the WGBH documentary, you got to keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize being the mark, the high call of God in Christ Jesus. You can't, if I'm looking at you, I cannot pay attention to that which is mine, that is uniquely mine to give. Joyce Meyer gave this, this is a long time ago, and I wouldn't even be able to trace this broadcast. But a long time ago, she told this story, and I thought it was so powerful. This is for people who believe in evil. She said, if the devil is standing in front of you, dancing, trying to get your attention, but you turn your back, it no longer has your attention. It no longer has your power. Whatever it is that's dancing in front of you that seems bigger than life, that seems more than you can live with, that if you withdraw your attention, it will fall away. It will go somewhere else because it will find that it has no home in your heart. And I bring that up not to say that I want you to believe in a power of evil, but my point being is that some of this stuff lives because it has our attention. You know, the Kardashians stay on magazines because folks keep buying them. I'm not saying you buy them, but somebody is buying them. Somebody knows if I put this person on the front of this magazine, this is going to generate a certain amount of sales. It's not just manufactured. There's a bottom line. Somebody's trying to pay for a college education or children's children. I mean, or increase their own net worth. So we're going to talk about taking back your power and putting it where you want it to be. Taking back your power and putting it where you want it to be. Oh, mercy. Okay. Jared says, Rev Sherri, congrats. You have your first trolling experience. That means your ministry is growing. Thanks, God. Okay. That is exactly what that means. All right, let's get in it. So I want to clarify reaping and sowing, because that question came and the person said, okay, I use the seeds, the soil, the crop. I can influence the crop. Like, what the heck are you talking about? And it made me say, you know what? I need to kind of back up, because very few families are involved with growing their own food. You know, I mean, I grew up at a time in the 70s and 80s. My childhood home sits on a plot of land that belonged to the Armstrong family before we bought it. And growing up, a portion of my neighborhood was still an active farm. He had crops. And there was down the middle, there was a where the big tractor rolled. Where I guess, I don't know what you, this is so funny, I'm going to admit this, but I don't really know what you do with a tractor. I guess you haul stuff, right? So this tractor is rolls through. And so it had basically grooved a path, and we could ride our bikes down the path that the tractor that Mr. Armstrong drove through his farm. Nobody lives that way, right? Nobody lives that way. So most people gathering food is like a trip to the grocery store. You know, many people have never been on a farm or seen what food looks like before it gets packaged for a sale. You know, and there are people with, you know, some small gardens in their home, but those gardens don't supply the bulk of what they eat. That's a supplemental, you know, so gathering food for the majority of people, for sure in the U.S., you know, it may not be true everywhere around the world, but for sure in the U.S., gathering food means a trip to the grocery store or a trip to some kind of market. Even if it's just a farmer's market, it's still, you're not going out, putting the seed in the ground, watching it grow, and then, you know, to know when the harvest is ripe. The harvest is always ripe because there's always something in the grocery store, right? And so this concept may be a little foreign. And so you may ask yourself, This is my question for you guys. Does anybody have any direct experience with farming? It occurred to me that I better not just assume that I'm the only one that didn't grow up on a farm or doesn't know much about farming. Did anybody have any farming experience that they want to share? And I will leave a little time. Okay, I got a lot of things happening here. Ray says as a very, very young child. So you lived on a farm?
No, actually, when it was actually my maternal grandparents' land in Texas. So that was where I lived the first 2 or 3 years of my life.
Got
it. I have a very vague memory of it. But
got it.
Most of their food was gathered from there. And they slaughtered their animals, the cows and the pigs, that sort of stuff.
Got it. Okay, cool. So I want to clarify why all the agricultural references to explain universal law. And one of the things to remember is that many of the texts that we use to study universal law, they have agricultural references. One, because the process by which the law works most closely mirrors what we see in nature. And so all insects, plants, animals, fish, and people come into being through an orderly process. So a seed gets planted, and over time, that seed germinates until it breaks open and a new life comes forth. But the other thing to remember is that these books were written during a time where more people were closely connected to farming and to getting their food from what we would call today an organic source, not from a grocery store and certainly not packaged. But this is the thing, in every instance of that I described, insects, plants, animals, fish, people, a seed is planted. Now, the only difference that you find is in what gets planted and how it gets planted. But a seed is planted. So we know that an apple tree starts with a seed being planted in the ground. But a puppy is different in the sense that the seed is planted in another dog. So but it's still, in all cases, a seed being planted. So the basic process is the same, but what and how changes. And so people who are mystics, who study the universe, who look at how things come about, who study why things look the way that they look, and they begin to observe nature, they realize that everything that we see, touch, taste, hear, or smell comes to us through this orderly process of a seed being planted. And so because we see no variations on this process anywhere, we call this process universal law. And so what we find is that the law does not vary, that the way the process works from species to species may be different, but the basic mechanics of a seed being planted and being in a, let's say, in the womb or in the ground for a period of time, that does not change. And everything unfolds according to this process of growth or this process of law. And there's a period of time where it happens and it cannot be observed by the naked eye. We only know that it's happening. And then we see what we would call the first fruits or the first sprouts. So one of the questions that comes up is, okay, well, why do we have to wait for the seed to become an expression? And the thing to know is that every seed has its own specific gestation period. Every seed has its own specific gestation period. So An apple seed becoming a fruit-bearing tree is about 3 to 4 years. A peach seed or becoming a peach tree takes about 2 to 4 years. On the animal side, you got elephants. Elephants remain pregnant for almost 2 years, 22 months before giving birth. But then you got the gestation period for a primate, depends on the species. It's about 6 months for a baboon or 9 months for a gorilla. Same thing with a human being. We've got 9 months for a human being, but every seed has its own gestation period. And so I don't know that we can necessarily answer the question of why there's a period of waiting, but we can say that each seed has a specific period. And so you may be planting seeds of plenty, expecting an overnight harvest. And what you have to understand is that nothing just appears overnight. Whatever you see has been growing unobserved or unnoticed. And so speaking of the young men in Charlottesville, Virginia, that this seed of discontent, this seed of hatefulness has been going on for an extended period of time. And it's not new. It may be new to someone, but it is not new in the sense that it has been gestating over time. And it reached a time where this expression now showed up. So this is what I felt like when I wrote the blog post as if I was counseling someone, namely myself. But I feel like I've been planting seeds of plenty forever. And the thing is that, yeah, it can feel like that. And I think this is why Paul counseled the Galatians in Galatians 6:7-9, do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for you reap whatever you sow. So let us not grow weary in doing what is right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up. You can trust the law. And you can always know that life always gives us what we have planted. Life always gives us what we have planted. This stuff that we are seeing, anybody who's been around will tell you, we know that this is not new. This is not a new phenomenon. Only someone who was maybe not a student of history is surprised by what we're seeing today. But there has to be an effort to work on it, and not just from a Band-Aid perspective, but to truly do the healing work. And I mean healing on both sides, healing in terms of what it meant to be enslaved, and what it also meant to be an enslaver, that nobody gets out of this thing scot-free, and that there is a healing work that must happen if we are to eradicate this from human consciousness. And it takes a consciousness to believe that it can be done. You know, you don't learn to swim believing that you can't swim. You don't learn to walk believing that you can't walk. Whatever it is that is going to be done, it has to be believed on some level that it can be done. And so there must be a consciousness that arises, that can begin with one person, that believes that healing can happen. Not just Band-Aid, we agree to disagree, but genuine healing, genuine forgiveness. I know that's a word y'all probably don't want to hear. Genuine compassion, genuine ownership of one's actions. There has to be room in the heart that can happen. And if it's not there, then we'll always be at this place, and the pendulum will simply swing back. Pendulum will simply swing back. It'll swing back to a liberal side, and then it'll go back to what we would call a conservative side. Or what we just go back and forth. But if we want healing, if we want change, then there has to be a consciousness that steps forward that says that, yes, this is possible, that I will hold the space for something greater than what's being expressed right now, and that I will believe in the face of what looks to be an intractable position. There's a teacher. He's made his transition. I made his transition in 2015. Marshall Rosenberg, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He was Jewish by faith, and he was a psychologist, and he negotiates peace. And he wrote a book. There were several books, but my favorite is Speak Peace in a World of Conflict. That was my first introduction to him, and then I got into nonviolent communication. But he lived in Switzerland for the latter part of his life. He's from the Midwest. And he talked about learning to communicate in a way that addresses behavior without making the person wrong. And hear what I'm saying. Everyone, whatever it is that they're doing, is operating in service to a need, and it's how they've been taught to get the need met. I think it was Obama earlier this week who tweeted, or maybe last week, who tweeted a quote from Mandela that no child is born hating someone because of the color of their skin. And that's true. No child is born hating anybody. That it's learned, and that we have been trained to meet our needs through certain behaviors. And maybe life circumstance or something may cause us to actually look at the ways that we meet our needs and say, you know what, I can do this better. But many times we grow into adulthood with the patterns that we were given from our childhood in terms of meeting our needs. And so it may not be efficient. It may not make sense. It may not, you wouldn't be able to trace it and say, oh, this is a logical path to getting your needs met, but it's how I've learned to get my needs met. And so one of the things that he was famous for doing was working with Jews and Muslims, and this is over in Israel and Palestine, working with them to negotiate peace and to begin to language the conflict in such a way that people could hear one another. Because often what happens when two people disagree, you don't actually really disagree on the point. You start making the other person wrong. And then once you make the other person wrong, as opposed to say your disagreement with the position, then they can no longer hear you. And so communication breaks down. And so he walks you through a path by which you can begin to hear the need that someone is trying to meet, albeit in heinous ways, and to walk you through to a place where you can have compassion and empathy for someone who is trying to meet a need in a very ignorant way. And it doesn't mean that you lay down and be a doormat or anything like that, but it means that you begin to have adult conversations around getting your needs met and beginning to negotiate with people who seem to be on the opposite side of the spectrum for you. So great book to look at. That may be something to go into next. It's certainly a teaching that I want to bring to Up Church, because on a smaller scale, certainly in a church or any kind of organization, disagreements arise, meaning that I want to do it this way and you want to do it that way. And how do we get to a place where we reach a happy medium, but nobody has to feel like they lost something? And we can, anyway, I'm getting off track. I want to stay on track. But I want to bring that up because I think it's at a time such as this, that kind of teaching, that kind of training, I think can be very helpful. The thing to keep in mind, right? Because, you know, you can feel weary as far as the seed planting. is to, even in the midst of whatever it is that's going on, even in the midst of the appearance not being yet gone or transformed or changed, is to remember to plant and continue to plant only what you want. So we may not like the expression that shows up, but it does prove the seed sown. And so we never have to fool ourselves, because our life proves what we've been thinking and feeling mostly. But what we can do, what is on our side, is to plant what we want. Apples only come from apple trees. Love only comes from seeds of love. Peace only comes from seeds of peace. And so if we do not want discord, do not plant it. Plant it. If there's anything to hold on to during this time period, especially during this time period, and especially with all the seeming chaos, is to remember that the law doesn't turn off in this situation, right? Meaning there's no on-off switch in this thing. It's perpetual. So it really is important that while we work to solve the mess in Charlottesville, Virginia, that there must be a window in our experience where we are planting seeds of love. There must be a window in our experience where we are planting seeds of peace. There must be a window in our experience where we're planting seeds of joy, that we're not absolved of our responsibility to keep that door open for love, for peace, for joy. That while we are holding these young men accountable for their hateful statements, for their incendiary actions, while we're holding them accountable, there is still the responsibility to sow seeds of love, peace, and joy. And that is, you don't get absolved of that. You don't get a pass on that, because you will find that then we get out of this circumstance and no ground has been laid for the future. All of the future has been laid paying attention to what happened in the past, which then sets the stage for it to come again. Prioritize your spiritual work above all else. This is the thing. Once you plant the seed, the harvest comes, right? So there's no, you don't course correct once the seed is in the ground. Once you put the apple seed in the ground, the apple tree is coming. Now you can starve the seed so that the tree doesn't grow that much, but that's possible, right? But if you have laid down apple seeds, then you should not expect oranges. And you should not expect joy when you've laid down seeds for sadness. Plant what you want and only what you want. And so if we have drawn a joyous experience, and we know that we've sown seeds of joy. And if we have drawn a painful experience, we know that we've sown seeds of pain. It cannot be otherwise. And so this is why our spiritual development has to be our top priority. We seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, because universal law works with us whether we are conscious of it or not. And so we have to challenge ourselves. I highly, highly recommend getting a very rock solid morning routine. You need a morning routine. Why? Because the first hour of the day is the rudder of the day. What you do at the top of the day sets the tenor and the tone for what happens for the rest of your day. And so it may feel like I cannot manage to get up any earlier than I'm getting up. Listen, just get up 10 minutes earlier. Just 10 minutes with God will begin to open the door for something greater. You have to prioritize that time where you are communing with the Spirit, where you are acknowledging your oneness with all there is. The world will come at you. And the thing is that you begin the day with at least, according to science, 40 to 60,000 thoughts that you shall think that day. It is not whether you will think them. It's just whether you on the 40 side or the 60 side. So you're going to think. The question is, what are you going to think? Because those thoughts are planting a garden. Those thoughts are laying down some type of garden. And the reason that I love the morning for this kind of work is because it sets the tone for what you do with those 40 to 60,000 thoughts. The challenge with waiting until the end of the day is that you, if that number holds up, if science is correct, you're about 30,000 in on your 40,000 thoughts, right? So unless you just own your game like that, I think that an opportunity has been missed. And so I really believe in a morning routine, something that puts you in a mental state of possibility, where you wake up in a space of, I got this, and I can do this. And whatever this is for you, if it's writing or your side business or whatever it is, that you are programming yourself to be able to think clearly throughout the day. And that starts in the morning. So I want to take a pulse. And the question that I have for you is, what seed does your life prove you have sown, and what new seed should you sow? What seed does your life prove you have sown, and what new seed should you sow? And I will take this question for myself. My life has proven that I have sown seeds of, sometimes you have a lot, sometimes you have a little. And the new seed for sure that I want to sow is a seed of perpetual plenty. What seed does your life prove you have sown? What new seed should you sow? Definitely working on seeds of plenty. And you can put your comments. I think we lost our troll. Quintina says track gardens are like the community gardens of today. Oh, Joe, I didn't know you had family in Texas. I'm originally from Houston. But what seed do you need to sow? Francis, yes, seeds of love. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, I must agree with that. Anybody else? Wonderful. Let's keep going. Seeds of abundance. Olga, I'm with you. 100%. Seeds of abundance. Yeah. And yes. I can say a whole lot more about that, but we're at 7:50, so I'm going to keep going. So where do man-made laws fit into this puzzle? And I think that McArthur gives a wonderful definition that helps us to recognize universal law. He says that universal laws are unbreakable, unchangeable principles of life that operate inevitably in all phases of our life and existence for all human beings everywhere, all the time. So is it unbreakable? Is it unchangeable? Does it operate inevitably, meaning that nobody has to make it turn on? In all phases of our life, meaning everywhere evenly present, you can experience it for all human beings everywhere, all the time. And, things that are like that, gravity is like that. The law of gravity, we can call that a universal law because everywhere gravity is at work. The law of aerodynamics works this way too. Everywhere the law of aerodynamics works. And provided that you cooperate with the law of aerodynamics, you get the experience of being able to participate with the law of aerodynamics. And the thing is that you can't break the law of gravity. You can break yourself against the law, but you can't break the law. You can't break the law of aerodynamics. You can break yourself against the law, right? We've seen that, but you cannot break the law. And these laws don't change based upon who you are. They remain true forever and for all time, never turning off. They're always perpetual. But here's the thing about them, and this is what makes them universal, is that they do not compel you to action. Man-made laws compel you to action. So the man-made laws tell you, don't go here, don't go there, right? But universal law, compliance is voluntary. You voluntarily comply with gravity. We know that there are people who have jumped off buildings who chose not to comply with gravity. whether accidentally, intentionally, or whatever. Compliance with universal law is always voluntary. And so we should agree with God because things will go better. But cooperate, cooperate, cooperate. And so what about things like racism, sexism, homophobia, ageism, all of that stuff? And I think one of the things that why we have difficulty accepting God's law as absolute and undeviating is because we keep thinking of it in terms of man's law. But a universal law, it's not like the laws of our government, right? With man's law, which says do this and don't do that. Universal law simply explains how life works. Man's law changes. Universal law does not change. Universal law beats man's law every time. There's a verse in Psalm, the first verse of the 127th Psalm that says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. The Lord in scripture refers to universal law. Unless universal law builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the universal law watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. In various regions of the US, people with brown skin could not buy property. Man's law said that people who look a certain way cannot own homes in certain areas. But man-made laws change periodically. That's how you know you're not dealing with something that is universal. So universal law beats man's law every time. And the thing is to just stop believing in external forces and believe only in universal law. Withdraw your attention from man-made laws and give it wholly to universal law. Why? Because what the law gives you, no man can take away from you. What universal law gives you, meaning you planted the seed, you kept yourself in the consciousness that would support it, no one can take away from you. If they did take it away from you, your consciousness would recreate it. Now, we have seen this at work. The stories of millionaires who lost their fortune and then gained it back. Because while they lost the money, they didn't lose the wisdom that produced it. The people who lose money and it stays gone, lottery winners, right? Children who grew up in wealthy families but didn't develop a wealth consciousness, right? So generally businesses like in the third and fourth generation, they don't necessarily survive or keep producing wealth because the consciousness that produced it gets further and further away. And unless the children have that consciousness, there's nothing there to sustain it. So what you agree with God, what you agree with, meaning you sow the seed, you develop it, you begin to plant the seed and cultivate it in consciousness, meaning you're doing the other work, but you're also doing the mental work to support it, the spiritual work to support it. No one can take that from you. No one. This is why you could have people, Black people, during slavery times who weren't slaves. This is why you could have a woman like Eula McClaney, who is one of my heroes, who with a 6th grade education amassed a fortune of over $300 million by the time she made her transition in 1986. She has a remarkable story. She wrote a book about it called God, I Listened. When you listen to the God inside of you, whatever it is that you want to do. This is a woman who had a 6th grade education. In the 30s, she was born in 1914. I think her first property was bought like either during the Depression or right after, somewhere around that time. The possibilities are endless. Just because there's a climate in which you are born, it does not mean that your life has to look like the climate in which you are born. That right where you are, you can carve out a niche for yourself, and you can do it for yourself, and you can help and teach other people to do it. We're never stuck. Andrea says, my life proves that I have said for many years, you can't have everything. I am now planting seeds of abundance too. Yes. Oh, Francis, seeds of forgiveness. Yes, yes. Oh, Quintina, I love that. She says, I have sown seeds of true love. The new seeds that I need to sow are plenty. Girl, I have sown seeds of true love too. Yes, yes. Jared says the new seeds needed to be planted is health, wealth, and joy. And Jared, I know you're planting that. I see it. I see it for you. Francis says, yes, we can't judge people's choices. The universe will bring them what their choice creates in vibration. Yeah. And I think that's the important, that's what we like to do. We like to look and say what somebody else got, right? But there's no way to know what's happening in somebody else's heart. We don't have a way to know that. And so we don't have a way to say that this experience happened because we're not involved in that. The only person with whom we are intimately involved is ourselves. So that's the only person that we can make a decent judgment call on, and barely then, because we still don't have the panoramic view. Quentin says, it's all about the energy in which you put it out. Yes. That's why media puts so much fear in each other that create bad vibes. Yes. You got to turn the TV off. Thank you, Joe. Neville Goddard's teacher, Abdullah, black as the ace of spades, rolling like a white man in the 20s and 30s. I love those stories that Neville shares about Abdullah. You don't have to agree with the world as it exists. You literally can create something different for yourself. You literally can create something different for yourself. And it's, you don't have to accept it, and I look to Johnny Coleman as a direct teacher, because I'm a minister in the movement that she created, the Universal Foundation for Better Living. And again, no judgment on other people's choices. But when other women were fighting to be heard and validated as ministers, she went out and created a mega church, and then started ordaining women all over the country, all over the world, really. Because we have churches in Central America, in the West Indies, in Canada, in the US. That's not the whole world, but we're getting there. My point being is that agree with God. What does God tell you is possible? Can you agree with that? Can you withdraw your attention from the world to agree with that? Can you trust the process of God inside of you, the law inside of you, enough to let go of what the world says is possible for you, or what you can't do, or what's the limits for you? And really own the fact that there are no limits. There flat out are no limits. So this is a picture of Eula McClaney. This is in front of her house in Holmby Hills, which is over by UCLA. A beautiful, beautiful house. And she proved God, and then wrote a book about it called God I Listened. Great book. It's out of print, but you can get some used copies on Amazon.com. And I recommend it. In the in the notes section of the YouTube video, I included a link to the book if you want to get the book. It's a great book. It's a great read, and she's a remarkable woman. And I learned about her through Les Brown. So grateful that I heard that on a recording that was like a throwaway name when he was rattling off a whole bunch of stuff. But a remarkable story. Take a look. But they always let a few through. As a teacher of mystical wisdom, I would like nothing more than to kill dead the belief that they always let a few through. Either God works or it doesn't. That's it. Either you agree with God, that God is unchanging, undeviating, unbreakable, or God is not. You cannot have it both ways. And if you insist on believing that they always let a few through, then at least follow up by saying, my God is partly mighty. Because you cannot claim Almighty God and also hold on to, well, they always let a few through. as an explanation for people like Oprah, or an explanation for people like Eula McClaney, or an explanation for people like Lisa Nichols. Almighty power operates through you. And if you believe that something external to you can check the power of God that flows through you, then no power on heaven or earth can reverse the kinds of expressions you draw to yourself. Because our experience proves what we believe, your life will reflect back to you this belief, and the statements I've written will sound like the mad writings of a spiritual teacher trying to sell you a bill of goods. And so you got to decide. You got to decide. You got to decide to choose or to agree with God. Get off the fence. Either you're going to hold on to the idea that they always let a few through, or you're going to say, no, what? No. Almighty God operates through me. And I might have some beliefs I need to let go that might be holding me back. But I refuse to accept the idea that there are limits on my life. Keep that. Put that in the incinerator of life. Let that stuff go. All right. So why did my soul need to experience racism? I don't know. Why did I need it? I don't know. This is what he says in the book. You can decide for yourself. We exist for the purpose of learning lessons through universal laws. As we learn to cooperate with God's law, we become transformed. Romans 12:2 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Every time we cooperate with God's law, our minds are transformed in some way, and we come up a little higher. We are like the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Eventually, we throw off the limitations of the cocoon and can take advantage of the higher laws. Although different forms of the same insect, the caterpillar cannot do what the butterfly can do. As a butterfly, it can take advantage of the law of aerodynamics. It can soar on winds and rise to amazing heights. It can travel across continents. The monarch butterfly, in its lifetime, it only lives for 6 to 8 months. The monarch butterfly can travel as far as 3,000 miles during its lifetime, in 6 to 8 months. No caterpillar can hope to accomplish such a feat until it becomes the butterfly. And so eventually we have to throw off the cocoon of racism. Your divine assignment wants to find expression through you. As long as you maintain a belief in an external power, you hold at bay all that God wants to do through you. As you begin to recognize that nothing external to you has power over you, you develop wings and you find that you can fly high above limited thinking. And so you simply have to work with the belief that nothing external to you has power over you. Nothing external to you has power over you. Work with that. There is something, this moment, you got to ask yourself, what is this moment birthing through me? There's a beautiful song from Faith Rivera called Gifts the Storm May Bring. Amazing song. And the song says, I embrace this pain that I feel. And I embrace this present moment, and there is something being birthed in me right now. There is something amazing being birthed in me right now. I'll go back to the example of Lisa Nichols, that when she was broke and did not have the money to purchase Pampers for her infant son, 8 months old, and had to wrap him in a towel for 2 days, that she reached a point where she said, no more. I will never be this broke or broken again. That you can reach a point in your consciousness that what crept up in Charlottesville, Virginia, can be a bottom line for you. No more. No more will I allow a world filled with fear. No more will I sit back and simply allow things to just happen as they are. I will actively contribute to a world that is better, than how I found it. And so you have to ask, what is asking to be born right now? What aspect of love is asking to be born right now? And the question is, will you be the person? You know, when you're on public assistance and you don't have Pampers and things have just been bad and they've been bad all your life, it is very easy to stay in that space, to stay in that vibration. Many people do. We love the stories of people who get up and transform, but many people never get up and transform. They get backed into a corner. They're like the dog sitting on the nail. The nail don't feel good, but it's the hell I know. And I would rather take a chance on the hell that I know than to dip into the unknown and find some fresh new hell, right? I'm afraid to jump off the cliff because what if I fall? What if this racism turns out to be a universal law? You know, and it's everywhere. Even it seems like it's everywhere. Even the president is all over the TV. It's in the White House. And, I look at everybody funny now when I go to the stores. I don't know what I'm gonna get. I don't know if I'm gonna get friendliness or meanness. I don't know, right? And it's. There is something asking to be born right now. Some aspect of God that is asking to be birthed through you. And the question is, can you take your attention away from the world long enough to work with what God has for you to do? Can you withdraw your attention long enough to pay attention to God in you? So I want to read these comments. Francis says you have to forgive to stop the karma chain. Yes. He says, if you cheat, you have to be cheated. If you steal, you have to steal and keep going until you're strong enough to forgive and end the chains. Yes. So it's time to do something. And this is what I recommend. Take it or leave it. Figure out what you truly want. What do you really get some clarity around that? Everybody don't want to be $1 million rich, right? Some people just want to be comfortable. And that represents plenty for them. Figure out what you truly want. Spend some time. Take a week. Don't just write it down and say, oh, this is what it is, unless you already know and you've done this work. But figure out what you truly want. And then ask God for the right seed needed to produce what you want. Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? Who have you been put here to help? For whose life do you want to make a difference? And then ask God for the seed to make that difference, to make that expression come forth. And then when you get the answer, plant like there is no tomorrow. Let it be all that you think about all the time. All great achievement begins with a burning desire. Let it be all consuming for you. Let it be what you wake up with. Let it be what you go to sleep with. Reverend Della told this story once. I had just started going to the church. So I hadn't even been a part of the ministry for, I don't know, a year, 2 years. And there was a woman. Reverend Della has a sense of humor that is just phenomenal. And it always catches you off guard because it's a little bit off color, kind of, not inappropriate, but just a little bit off color. And she said, there's a woman in the congregation. I think it was a class. And she said, I feel like God is telling me to paint. And Reverend Della said, you feel like God is telling you to paint? She said, listen, if I felt like God was telling me to paint, everything from my house to here and back would be painted. Like basically I would walk with a paintbrush in my hand. Whatever seed God gives you to sow it with abandon. Put everything you have in it. Leave it all on the floor or on the court, as they say in sports. Olga says we have to express our divine oneness. Everything is connected to everything else. What we think, say, do, and believe will have a corresponding effect on others and the universe around us. Yes, yes. I am so interested in shifting the conversation. And hear that you have the ability to tap into you, to reach into that which is amazing in you and change the conversation. Now, part of what that means is you got to stop participating in the conversation that's going on. But you have the ability to look inside of you and draw out that which is only yours to give and shift the conversation. What if, just what if you decided to really concentrate on love and to bring out the most universal expression of love that you know to bring? It would tip the scales, because love is the strongest force that there is. It would tip the scales. So we're not stuck. We're not going to hell in a handbasket, even though it might feel like that right now. But right where we are, we have the power to make a difference. And I suggest that we get up and do it. Questions? Oh, Quintina says, love, love, love. It is time for unconditional love to emerge from each of us. Yes. Francis says, wants to meet the good person to put my project into action. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I switched the camera up. I gotta try. There's no way for me to show you how to tripod. I got a tripod. So my PowerPoint is like over here to the right, or probably what looks like your left. And so that's why I kept looking in that direction. Thank you so much for tonight. We'll be in chapter 8 next week, which is how to use universal law to create your destiny. How to use universal law to create your destiny. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Quintina. She says, I want to thank you for this ministry. Love you to life. I love you back, girl. And I'm gonna see you down in Virginia Beach, right? You'll be hanging out in Virginia Beach, hopefully. September 22nd and 23rd is when I will be there. Have a beautiful night, and I will talk to you guys next week. Take care.